Om Shanti. Thought we could look at the subject of tolerance today, because this is very much a part of the drama that's in my own personal life. So I always kind of look on it as a message when things are happening in my life. I think that in a way there's like a synchronization going on where everyone is experiencing something, and perhaps everyone is experiencing something or another of intolerance or irritability, aggravation, many terminologies all connected to the same things. The English dictionary was created around this aspect that these feelings evolve, and as these feelings evolve, so we create more to identify them, more words in the English language and no doubt worldwide, so that we actually have a more specific connection with a particular feeling. But we are talking about feelings really in the sense of, we are feeling beings, and so when we are tolerating things, we're actually trying to get our space back really, because the tolerance of a bicycle chain is, if you have a bicycle chain too tight, then it would snap as soon as you started to ride it. So you always need that little space, and that space is called the tolerance of the chain. And it's a bit like the human consciousness really, in the sense of when you've got this space between yourself and the thing that's affecting you, then you've got a place to work, a place of safety, a place of security, a space to breathe, a space to think. And so tolerance is a major aspect of human consciousness that's needed to actually enable other things to work. For example, you can't really cooperate in the real sense of the word with others when you're feeling intolerant inside, because although the actions might be cooperative and the words might be cooperative, the feelings won't be. So tolerance is needed for that. You need tolerance to adjust to people's different ways, and there are levels of tolerance that we have, like peeling back the layers of an onion, and that's why we say that it was the straw that broke the camel's back, because we'd basically had enough. And there are normally two areas that make a person intolerant, and that's the situation that comes as suddenly, out of the blue, someone says something to us or something does something to us, and there's an automatic reaction to that. So the reaction is something that you can't really do anything about when you've been meditating for a while and making this space between yourself and the outside world, which also includes the physical body. You're actually creating more layers for yourself of tolerance, because you're creating a non-attached, non-affected state. People that are very extrovert have major problems with becoming tolerant, although you can change the impossible to possible, because there's help from beyond this world. Always when the human being shows that amount of courage, there will be help to support them. And when someone's very extrovert, they're very need to speak a great deal, need to bond a great deal with the words that we use. We have to find common denominators in the sense of one person will say something of interest to another person, and if the other person's interested, then there's that common bond. And all relationships rely on a common bond to unite us of some bond or another, whether it be hobbies that people do, or whether it be relationships, whether it be family, whether it be children and home building, that kind of thing. But there's always a bond. Sometimes there's a bond in our common goals, in the sense of we're aiming to establish the same thing in life. So that would be another way that the person connects to another person, and sometimes a large part of the time that the actual bonding takes place through gossip and defamation and even slander in some situations, whereby people are looking to unite with one another, and to actually be around people that can become very introvert and stay in silence for long periods of time because they enjoy their own company is very useful, because when you get people that are very extrovert and needy, then there's a constant usage of energy through the mouth, and that's obviously everything takes energy. So for a person who's very extrovert in that nature, they have to start trimming the different areas whereby they speak short, sweet and soft, and get towards the essence, and to practice. Sometimes people feel uncomfortable with being silent because they feel the pull towards talking, towards doing, and often if you watch and observe when they try to make this effort to withdraw and create this inner space that is so vital to increase our tolerance, you find that they fall asleep very easily because they don't see or they don't feel an active mind to be very productive. So the reactive kind of intolerance is where something comes out of the blue suddenly and it will catch you unawares, and it basically shows how much there is inside of the subconscious that can come from inside to outside, because that's the storeroom of whether you use the word anger or fear. Thing is, I see fear and anger in a very similar way, really, because they both create a lot of intolerance inside, and reactivity takes place, whether someone's in an angry mode or a frightened mode. Sometimes you can't tell the difference whether they're angry or frightened, because the reaction is based on something of negativity in the storeroom, and it emerges, and you get this situation where the big army's chasing the small army, and the small army's running for cover, and the big army's full of anger, and the small army's full of fear. And then the small army reaches home base, and the fear factor changes to anger as their cavalry join them, and there's a retaliation and a revenge going on, so that the actual fear changes to anger. and the big army that is now the small army is chased by the small army that is now the big army, and the big army that is now the small army's anger changes to fear, and the small army that is now the big army's fear changes to anger. That's it, got it right. Eventually. So when you get this kind of retaliatory thing going on, it's a build-up of many emotions that are being consumed in the consciousness. Some people create a lot of anger through their video games, the type of films that people watch, the type of things that people talk about. And it can be the injustice that a person feels, even though there are plenty of injustices in this world, but the actual anger that they're feeding off is their own stored anger. And as I say, that can be fear. It can be fear-based, that if they don't do something about it, then this is going to happen. So there's a very thin line between this fight and flight, this fear and anger, where one person will face a situation with anger and another person will run away, and you get the kind of person that will have the thought to run away and fight again another day, and yet they do face the situation and they fight. Still, both are defined as being out of control. So whether one's exercising their anger, one day that can be their downfall, their fear. And whether someone's exercising their fear, one day they could feel such a suppression that anger emerges. So you can't do anything about the automatic state of reactivity, because that anger's going to be there. But it's basically what you do about it when the anger emerges, because you can actually create a story of it and make it something from potentially nothing. You could hold on to it for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and there's kind of like, someone described it once as there was anger and then there was rage, whereby it's held on to and cooked, if you like, here between the mind and the intellect, and the mind has the thought of what's happened and the intellect goes and into the actual story of it and expands it, and then it becomes like a feeling of resentment, and that resentment could go on for 20, 30 years or so, or it could be the belief, using your power of belief, we call it faith, in it being a trauma, so it's been made something into a big thing. And when you actually try to tell someone that it's a very small thing, if they believe in it and their mind has made it very big and very powerful, then you're liable to get into some kind of a heavy argument stroke debate about that. There will be an unhealthy discussion, which, let's face it, a lot of people's anger and annoyance is coming from trying to convince people who are trying to convince people. When a person is trying to convince something of that they're right, the way they see things, and the other person is also doing the same kind of things. Sometimes when we've been to these interfaiths, and not everyone by any means, but sometimes there are people there that are just there that want you to see that their way is the right way, their belief system is correct and your belief system is incorrect. And so one of the major parts of becoming more tolerant is not trying to convince people, not trying to advise people too much, because it's in the word advice. You add vice, and when you add vice, people aren't actually listening to advice. There's a switch in the human consciousness that switches off to listening to too much, because it's been put to them time and time again, and they want to do it their way, they want to have their space, they want to do it in their own time, whereas I might be saying, now's the time, you have to change this thing, it's now or never, and they're busy saying it will change in time, you know, at the right time, it's my way or the highway, and I might be saying it's my way or the highway. And lots of people do listen to people that have my way or the highway, and all it does really is it creates a suppression. When you see some of the parents, the way they talk to their children, and grandparents, the way they talk to their children, they're not necessarily respecting them, they're in fear of them. You know, so this belief system that a person carries throughout their life, I'm not saying everyone, because lots of people have this, they say something and the child or the grandchild, out of respect for their peers, will say, Haji, yes, sure, thank you for that advice, thank you for that guidance. But there's a lot, and when they become very sullen and quiet and there's that suppression, you can almost see the vibration of suppression coming from them. So that's not healthy. And so you've got the three aspects really of, which is thankful to Dr. Tversky, his name is, he mentioned this anger, and then this rage, which means I make something out of it and hold on to it, and then a resentment that we call later in life as a trauma, and we'll believe completely that it was that situation that was responsible for my depressive state, and yet I've actually made that, held that, and elaborated on that, added a new 50,000 thoughts to that, and went to people who agreed with my demise. So that's not always helpful when you get people that actually empathise with a negative. When you go to people and you phone them because they're a listening ear, and they actually will listen to my trials and tribulations with people, and no one is turning round to me, and maybe it's out of my selection that I don't choose those people that tell me those things, but sometimes you need someone to just come along and say, you're doing it to yourself, you're making your own a rod for your own back by thinking and adding the negativity to a negative situation, or as we were taught as kids, two wrongs don't make a right. And of course there's the other one whereby things grind you down little by little, and this is very much removing your layers, and if you're not building up layers, then they'll just be removed, because that's the idea really, to become a more peaceful, happy person, is that you've got to be able to handle situations without the ego getting stuck in to the way things could be, should be, might be, would be. And in actual fact, the reason why everything is what it is because it is. And until someone becomes more of themselves as they are, then that's not going to change. They've got to become more of who they are, so that that's processed rather than who they're not. And who you're not is the role, basically. All the reactions that you react on, all the situations and circumstances that come in your life is connected to the role, generally speaking, and that's not really your life. The life is the life behind the life. So the life is the self that's playing the role in the life. Whereas when you think that this is your life, then you play that role accordingly. And you play that role according to your history, the way you've been playing that role until you decide to change it. We're creatures of habits. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but in actual fact, this old dog has learnt new tricks because I choose to not react to situations and circumstances as much as my capacity will allow. I can't do any more than that. Eventually, if there's something inside, it will come out, but it's being settled inside, not trying to settle it outside. You know, with my own situation, which is the reason why I wanted to make this video today on tolerance, is because I live with a person that's very ill now. She's very, there's something happened in the brain, so she's no longer in control of what she does. So therefore she'll act in a certain negative way, and it won't be seen as negative because in her world she's acting quite normally because of a stroke and dementia and all sorts of complications that can go on in the brain. The mind isn't able to use that, the computer. It is just a computer that the soul uses, and when there's nothing wrong with her mind, it's the brain that's actually been damaged. And so because of that, all manner of madness comes out. Madness in our world, but then if you was to analyse the contents of most people's mind, it's pretty mad, isn't it, really? It's pretty full of madness. So, for example, I sleep in, with this person, I sleep in the same room as her because she's not safe walking across, and during the night she'll walk across. So I'm in the situation whereby the living room is my bedroom and it's her bedroom, and she was up out of bed and walking around crying out for help for a good 2.5 hours trying to get out. And these things are the layers that I'm talking about, your layers of tolerance, because obviously everyone has the desire to sleep. If you could remove that desire and just say this is what the need is, but most people have a desire to sleep at a certain time, and it's almost like seen as a human right. So that's the first layer that it will challenge you when you want something which is your human right. And in my mind, at that period of time, there's something that I've done from the past that is being settled, where a right that I think is my right is not my right. So this is the first thing that I was thinking when she started calling out and crying out and saying mad things, trying to get out the door, banging on the door, for a good 2.5 hours. So that's the first thing to start thinking, rather than a thought of why doesn't she should, all these thoughts that create intolerance. I'm processing that this is something of settlement taking place. Not always easy, because the human mind's geared towards seeing the reaction, watching the reaction, being a part of the reaction and creating a negative, adding to the negative. So there's only one thing that's happening that's negative, and that's what's going on in my world at that moment in time. How I build the negativity or disperse the negativity is a choice, especially when it's a non-reactive situation, because you've got time to think. And that's important, that you've got time to think. The second thing is it's a drama that I can't change. So I've got to accept it, but I've got to accept it with space. So I don't just accept it as a stress functioning state where I'm attached to the situation and the feeling I've got to accept it. No, I'm actually stepping back and creating space between myself and the situation. So this would be the second layer that we deal with, is that we're not actually trying to change the situation, because trying to change it is a reactive state. And I'd done all that I could do regarding try to talk to the person, try to put the person back to their bed and stay there, use love, great deal of love and comfort, stroking the face to say, rest there, sleep now, like it's time for sleep, let me sleep, please, and stroking the face. That didn't work. Then use the law, go to bed firmly but without anger, stay there, lay there, but without that anger that people show, that disturbance, that rage in the eyes. The eyes show it all. And so I'd used love and law because that was the method that was needed. So you're not actually trying to change the situation, you're just using the methods and putting the methods out there. They didn't work, so she carried on getting out of the bed, banging on the doors. So then this comes down to the next thing, where I need to, say that this is the drama, this is the way it's going to be. She's safe because she can't get out of that room because the doors are shut and locked. So therefore she's safe, and now I've got to make myself safe. So I started to go inside and feeling myself to be the soul, because I know that that quietens everything, that has an effect on the outside. Feeling the self to be a soul separate to the role. The soul is playing the role, so the role isn't playing the soul. The body is our instrument, we are not its instrument. And so there was this thought, and then I turned my mind to the Supreme Soul, merged my mind in the ocean of peace, the ocean of light, the ocean of love, and kept on connecting. There was a break where it got disconnected. So like any phone call really, if you're connected and you get disconnected, then you reconnect again, because it's important that I connect to this one, not with that one. That one will get the peace to enable them to sleep. And so this went on for some time, and obviously the meditation wasn't powerful enough because of the disconnection, and so I'd reconnect, and eventually there was a quietness over the other side of the room, and she fell into a deep slumber, and I was able to rest in peace. It doesn't mean to say you have to die to rest in peace, although it is like dying from the outside world, because there's a lot of peacelessness in the storms of the outside world, and as a being that's playing a role through the human body, you're only actually in the eye of the storm at all times, although we get caught up in the storm, especially when the storm is stormier. When it's just a little bit pitter-patter of the rain outside, then it's not too bad. But when we're actually caught in a ferocious storms, well, the nature of all storms is they pass. Another one has just passed. And the way I would have dealt with that before I came to the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University was I would have probably, by now, I would have given up on that person, and that person would have been either they'd be gone or I'd be gone, or we would just go crazy together, and I don't think that's a very good way to go. So by dealing with these layers, you're building up more tolerance, you're connecting to the fact that it's a drama, you're making the effort to do something about the drama in a non-attached, unemotional state. So when words are spoken, you speak in an unemotional, non-attached state. If you speak in an emotional state and the person's not listening, you'll find the words getting faster and getting louder. And all that will happen is my mind here will become more peaceless because I'll be acting out of sync with my true self. So I always think half an hour is plenty for a little chit chat. So I do some meditation and see if we can become the embodiment of tolerance. Remember, whenever you're creating peace inside with your thoughts, you're reducing the amount of intolerance, the amount of impatience, the amount of hate, the amount of greed, the amount of jealousy is all being reduced by your inner peace being revealed to yourself. It's only a piece of the peace, but piece by piece it becomes a very large piece. So let the physical body become rested. Let all the muscles of the body become soft and relaxed. And in particular, pay attention to the muscles of the face. Allow them to become relaxed, quiet, soft, pliable. My shoulders, I let go of any tension in the neck and the shoulders. I breathe in a warm glow of peace, and as I exhale, I let go of the past. I let go of any judgment of myself and create a clean sheet for me to draw my future fortune. I settle my past and create a healthy future to meet and greet me. And I wonder, where is the core of all these peaceful, positive thoughts and feelings coming from. And I look and I focus my attention on the center of my forehead, right at the very core, at the center of the forehead is where my world breathes from, a source point of light behind the eyes. The eyes are the windows of the soul, and every feeling, every thought that I create is one of light, and I let go of my attention on thoughts and feelings, and I sit within the light of the light, and peace spreads throughout my entire body, and my whole body becomes like white light, like an angelic form of peaceful, powerful, pure and uncontaminated light. There is the recognition that this is my light, and I can use my light for peace, the light of peace, for love, the light of love, and for happiness, the light of joy. I am that light. Om Shanti.